You may be watching this today feeling unseen, like life has taken more from you than it's ever given back. Maybe somewhere along the way, you stopped believing in yourself, in people, even in the goodness of God. You've worn the labels that pain gave you not enough, too broken, too late. But friend, I want you to know, God still sees you, not as the world has called you, but as He created you. When He looks at you, He doesn't see failure, He sees His child, full of potential, wrapped in grace, destined for more. You may have fallen, but you haven't been forgotten. You may have lost faith, but God hasn't lost faith in you. You are not who life says you are. You are who God says you are. So often we let the noise of the world shape our identity. We wear labels given to us by circumstances, by people who didn't understand us, or by seasons that left us wounded. Maybe someone told you that you weren't smart enough, talented enough, or worthy of love. Maybe you failed once, and now that failure has become the story you tell yourself. But I want you to know those labels don't belong to you. They are not permanent. They are not divine. They are not who you are in the eyes of God. When God looks at you, He doesn't see your past. He sees your potential. He doesn't focus on what went wrong. He sees what can still go right. Long before you were ever rejected by people, you were accepted by Him. Long before you were hurt, He had already prepared healing. The world may call you broken, but God calls you chosen. The world may see your flaws, but He sees His fingerprints all over your life. There's a story in the Old Testament about Gideon. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Gideon was hiding, afraid, uncertain, feeling small. Yet the angel didn't greet him as a coward or a failure. He said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon couldn't believe it. He looked at himself and saw weakness, but God looked at him and saw strength. That's what grace does. It speaks to your potential, not your past. You may look at your life and see only what's gone wrong. You may see the mistakes, the missed opportunities, the disappointments. But God sees something different. He sees the person He created you to be. He sees a heart that's been bruised but not broken, a spirit that's still capable of rising again. You are not what people said about you. You are not what your failures suggest. You are not defined by the season you're in. You are defined by the one who spoke your name before the world even began. Maybe it's time to let go of those old names. Failure, unworthy, forgotten, and start answering to the name God has already given you: beloved, chosen, redeemed. When you begin to see yourself through His eyes, everything changes. The weight of comparison lifts. The shame loses its voice. And you begin to walk in quiet confidence, knowing you don't have to earn God's approval. You already have it. So today, before you step into the noise of life, take a moment to remember who you are. Look in the mirror and remind your heart, I am not who life says I am. I am who God says I am. Let that truth settle deep in your spirit. Because when you see yourself the way God sees you, you'll start to live like the person He's always known you could be. And that's where belief begins to grow again, right where you stop listening to the world and start listening to the whisper of grace. God never consults your mistakes to confirm your worth. If you've ever felt like your failures disqualified you, you're not alone. We all have moments we wish we could erase. Words we shouldn't have said, paths we wish we hadn't taken, people we hurt or who hurt us in return. Sometimes those moments replay in our minds like an old film, reminding us of where we went wrong. But here's the truth. Your mistakes may explain your past, but they don't define your future. God doesn't look at you through the lens of shame. He looks at you through the eyes of mercy. There's a story in the Gospel of John about a woman caught in the very act of adultery. The crowd wanted to stone her, to condemn her for her mistakes. They saw her as guilty, unworthy, beyond redemption. But Jesus knelt beside her. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He simply said, "Let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone." And one by one they walked away. Then, looking into her eyes, he said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." That's what grace sounds like. It doesn't ignore the truth, but it covers it with love. It doesn't excuse sin, but it reminds us that we are still loved in spite of it. God didn't cancel his plan for that woman because of her failure, and he won't cancel his plan for you either. Maybe you've been carrying guilt for years. Maybe you think you've gone too far, that you've messed up one too many times. But God's mercy runs deeper than your mistakes. When he chose you, he already factored in every wrong turn, every setback, every broken promise. He knew the times you'd fall short, and he still said, "I want you." David made terrible choices. He failed morally, emotionally, spiritually. Yet God still called him a man after my own heart. Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times, and yet he became one of the greatest voices of faith in history. If God can use them, he can use you. Your failures don't surprise him. They're not the end of your story, they're the part where his redemption begins. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. We replay what we did, and shame whispers, "You're not good enough for God to love you." But grace whispers louder, "You never stopped being mine." If you'll let him, God will take the very place where you fell and turn it into the place where you rise. The pain that once defined you can become the platform that refines you. That's how mercy works. It rebuilds what the world said was ruined. So don't hide from God because of your mistakes. Run to him. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for honesty. When you bring your broken pieces to him, he doesn't discard them. He reshapes them into something beautiful. And as you rest in that truth, your heart begins to heal little by little. The shame loosens its grip. The past loses its power. And your spirit grows ready to believe again in a grace that never stops reaching. Faith begins again where disappointment tried to end it. There are moments in life that take the breath right out of you. When the dream you prayed for crumbles. When the door you knocked on stays closed. When the answer you hoped for never comes. You thought you were walking in faith, and yet everything fell apart. It's easy to believe when the pieces fit, when the path is clear. But real faith, the kind that moves mountains, is often born in the quiet ashes of disappointment. Maybe you've been there, sitting in the aftermath of something you couldn't fix. A relationship ended, a job was lost, the healing didn't come. You did all the right things, but the outcome still broke your heart. And now, faith feels far away, almost unreachable. You tell yourself you still believe, but deep down, doubt whispers, "What's the point in hoping again?" But friend, that's exactly where God does his best work. Right in the middle of your uncertainty. Faith isn't the absence of pain, it's the courage to trust God in the middle of it. It's standing in the ruins of what you thought life would be and saying, "God, I still believe you can bring beauty from this." Think of the story of Lazarus. His sisters, Mary and Martha, believed that Jesus could heal their brother. They had faith, strong, unwavering faith. But when Jesus didn't come in time, Lazarus died. Their hearts were broken, their faith shaken. Yet, when Jesus finally arrived, he didn't scold them for doubting. He wept with them. He felt their pain. And then he did the unthinkable. He called Lazarus out of the tomb. What looked like the end was only the beginning of a greater miracle. Sometimes, what we think is a dead end is actually a doorway for God's glory to shine brighter. Your disappointment may have delayed your faith, but it doesn't have to destroy it. Maybe God didn't answer the way you expected because he's preparing something better, something that will not only restore what you lost, but renew who you are. Faith that has been through disappointment is stronger, deeper, more authentic. It's not built on feelings, it's built on trust. It's the kind of faith that says, "Even if I don't understand, I still know you're good." That kind of faith has seen both the valley and the mountaintop and chooses, to believe that God's hand is in both. If your heart feels heavy with unanswered prayers, let yourself rest in this truth. God hasn't forgotten you. What you thought was silence may actually be His preparation. The delay is not denial, it's development. He's teaching your heart to believe again, not in the outcome, but in Him. And when that quiet spark of faith begins to flicker once more, don't rush it. Let it grow slowly. Let it breathe again. Because that small flame born in the shadows of disappointment will one day shine brighter than the pain that tried to put it out and lead you gently into the next season of grace. When you can't see your value, God still calls you chosen. There are seasons when the mirror doesn't reflect what God says about you. You wake up and all you see are the flaws, the failures, the reasons why you think you don't measure up. The voices of doubt grow louder than the whispers of faith. And somewhere along the way, you begin to believe that maybe you're not worth much at all. But friend, your value isn't determined by how you feel. It's determined by who made you. And the one who created you never makes mistakes. There's a story in the Old Testament about Samuel being sent to anoint the next king of Israel. God told him to go to the house of Jesse, where one of his sons would be chosen. Jesse brought out all his strong, handsome sons, each one seemingly fit for the crown. But as Samuel looked at them, the Lord said, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. When they had all passed by, Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" Jesse almost forgot David, the shepherd boy out in the fields. He wasn't even considered worthy to stand among his brothers. Yet, he was the one God had chosen. Maybe that's where you are right now. Out in the fields, unseen and uncelebrated. Others have been picked before you, recognized before you, promoted before you. And you've started to wonder, did God forget about me? But what if this quiet season isn't punishment, it's preparation? David's time in the fields wasn't wasted. That's where he learned to listen to God, to fight his battles, to play his songs of worship. What others overlooked, God was using to build something sacred. You may feel invisible, but heaven sees you. You may think you're not enough, but God calls you chosen. He sees the treasure beneath the layers of insecurity, the beauty beneath the scars. When the world says, "You don't matter," God says, "You're mine." Your worth doesn't fluctuate with the opinions of others. It doesn't change with the mistakes you've made or the seasons you've endured. It is anchored in the eternal truth that you are loved completely, unconditionally, and forever. There's a quiet strength in knowing that God's approval is not something you earn. It's something you already have. You don't have to strive to be chosen. You already are. Before you were born, He called you by name. Before you could prove yourself, He set His affection on you. So lift your head even if your heart still trembles. You are seen even when overlooked. You are valued even when unrecognized. And you are chosen even when you don't feel worthy. God is not finished writing your story. He's simply shaping you for the moment when His choice in you will be revealed. And in that quiet assurance, your heart grows still enough to begin hearing the gentle truth of the next promise waiting to unfold. Grace doesn't erase your story, it redeems it. So many of us spend our lives trying to run from what we've been through. We look back on the chapters we wish we could rewrite, the moments we fell short, the words we shouldn't have said, the people we lost, the choices we regret, and we tell ourselves, if only I could start over. But God never asks you to erase your story. He invites you to let Him redeem it. The same places where you've been broken can become the very places where His light shines through the brightest. In the book of Luke, Jesus meets a woman who had lived a life many would have judged. She came quietly, carrying an alabaster jar of perfume, and began to weep at His feet. Her tears fell freely as she poured out her past, her pain, her worship. Others looked on and whispered, wondering how someone like her could even dare to approach him. But Jesus saw her differently. He saw not her failures, but her faith, not her shame, but her surrender. And with words filled with grace, he said, "Your sins are forgiven. Go in peace." That's the beauty of grace. It doesn't erase where you've been, it transforms what it means. Grace takes the sting out of your past and replaces it with purpose. The tears you cried in secret become seeds of compassion. The pain you thought would break you becomes the platform where you help someone else heal. God never wastes a wound. Every scar you carry is proof of His mercy still at work. Maybe you've been trying to hide your story because you think it's too messy, too complicated, too far gone. But friend, your story is the very thing God wants to use to touch others. What you've walked through can become someone else's roadmap to hope. The places where you once felt unworthy can become the places where His redemption shines the brightest. Think of Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times, and yet Jesus didn't erase that part of his journey. Instead, He met Peter right where he had failed, restored him, and then used him to lead thousands to faith. That's redemption. God didn't remove Peter's weakness. He repurposed it. You see, grace doesn't make your past disappear. It makes it meaningful. It rewrites the ending without changing the beginning. It teaches you that every wrong turn, every detour, every dark night still leads back to the arms of a loving Father who says, "You are still mine." So don't despise your story. Don't hide the broken pages. Hand them to the author who knows how to turn pain into purpose and loss into legacy. The ink of grace runs through every line of your life, softly declaring, "This is not wasted." As you begin to see your story through His eyes, your heart grows quieter, more at peace, ready to receive the deeper healing that comes next. The gentle work of grace teaching you how to begin again. You can't heal by hiding the pain, but you can rise by handing it to God. We live in a world that teaches us to stay strong, to keep smiling, to pretend everything is fine even when our hearts are breaking. Somewhere along the way, we learn to cover our pain instead of confronting it. We bury it under business, under responsibilities, under the mask of "I'm okay." But what we hide can't heal. The wounds we ignore don't disappear. They simply wait, quietly asking to be acknowledged, to be handed to the one who can make them whole again. Maybe you've been carrying something heavy for a long time, a loss you never processed, a betrayal that still stings, a disappointment that left you questioning your worth. You've learned how to function through the pain, how to keep moving while a part of you still aches. But friend, God never intended for you to carry that weight alone. He never asked you to be perfect. He only asked you to be honest. In the Psalms, David writes, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Notice it doesn't say God avoids the brokenhearted. It says He draws near. The very places we try to hide from Him are often the places He wants to heal. David knew this because he had lived it. He made mistakes, faced loss, and battled deep sorrow. But instead of pretending, he poured it all out before God. His Psalms are filled with raw honesty, fear, doubt, pain, hope, and praise. David's healing began not when he fixed everything, but when he finally stopped hiding. When you bring your pain to God, something sacred happens. You may not get all the answers right away, but you'll begin to feel His peace wrap around you. The same hands that shaped the stars are gentle enough to hold your tears. The same voice that spoke creation into existence can quiet the storm inside your heart. God doesn't rush your healing. He meets you in the process. It's okay to cry. It's okay to admit you're not as strong as you seem. Healing isn't weakness, it's worship. Every time you choose to bring your pain into the light, you're saying, "God, I trust you more than my fear." That kind of surrender moves heaven. Maybe you've tried to heal by yourself, but the hurt keeps resurfacing. Maybe forgiveness feels too far away or peace feels impossible. But when you let go, truly let go, something shifts. You're no longer defined by the wound, you're defined by the one who's healing it. The pain that once controlled you begins to lose its power. And in that moment of release, when your hands finally open and your heart whispers, "Lord, I give it to you," you'll feel the first quiet breath of freedom. Not because the pain never happened, but because it no longer owns you. It's in that sacred surrender that the heart softens and grace finds room to work, preparing you for the deeper truth that even when you feel unseen, you are still chosen. Maybe as you've listened today, something inside of you has stirred. A quiet reminder that even after everything you've walked through, God still has His hand on your life. You may have been broken, bruised, or forgotten, but you've never been beyond His reach. Every scar tells a story, every tear has purpose, and every setback has been preparing you for a comeback that only grace could write. When you begin to see yourself the way God sees you, not through the lens of shame, fear, or regret, but through the eyes of love, you start to walk differently. You carry peace where there used to be anxiety. You speak with hope where there used to be doubt. And you start to believe again, not because everything is perfect, but because you've seen what happens when you put your story back into the hands of the one who never stopped believing in you. God's love isn't fragile. It doesn't break when you do. His mercy doesn't run out when you fall short. His plans for you don't vanish because of a few wrong turns. The same God who saw value in David, who restored Peter, who forgave the woman at the well, that same God looks at you today and calls you His own. So lift your head. The past doesn't define you anymore. The pain doesn't have the final word. Grace does. Hope God does. And as you step forward, do it with quiet confidence. Not the kind the world gives, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. You are loved. You are chosen. You are redeemed. So take a deep breath and whisper from your heart, "Lord, teach me to believe again."